Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today's case is about a celebration that turned into tragedy within hours, the sudden and suspicious death of newlywed Elisa Gomez.
It's such a profoundly unsettling story, a day that's meant to be the absolute pinnacle of happiness.
Right, the wedding day.
Exactly. And instead, it ends in this terrible loss. A bride, Elisa Gomez, found dead just hours after saying, "I do." It just completely flips the narrative.
It does. From ultimate joy to, this enduring mystery and the heartbreak for her friends, her family. It's hard to even imagine.
Absolutely. Waking up to that news after celebrating a wedding, just devastating.
And it forces us to ask these really difficult questions, doesn't it? What actually happened to Elisa? Was it kind of tragic medical event that no one saw coming?
Or maybe an accidental overdose, a terrible mistake with medication or alcohol.
That's one possibility the reports touch on. But then there's this other darker undercurrent, this suspicion that maybe it wasn't an accident at all.
Right. Something more sinister. That's what a lot of people, especially those who knew her, lean towards.
So that's what we're going to try and unpack today. We'll look at all the angles, the official reports, the criticisms of how things were handled initially, and, importantly, the theories that have really taken root online.
Mm-hmm.
We want to explore every thread.
Let's start with Elisa herself. Who was she?
Okay, so the sources paint a picture of Elisa Gomez as a 47-year-old woman living in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And it seemed like she was heading into, a new chapter.
And her friends and family, they consistently describe her in such warm terms. Very kind, vibrant, a huge animal lover, apparently.
Took in strays, help people out.
Yeah, the kind of person who'd give you the shirt off her back, as one source put it. Really compassionate. And that's important, right? Because it makes the way she died feel so wrong to those who knew her best.
They all said she was happy on her wedding day. Excited.
Universally, yes. Good mood, looking forward to it. Which, again, stands in really stark contrast to what happened, and it's why her family just never bought the initial ruling.
The sources also mentioned she'd been married before. Not dwelling on it, but it's part of her story.
Right, just context. Shows she had experience with relationships, perhaps, but it doesn't directly explain the tragedy itself, just background detail.
Okay, let's focus on the wedding day itself, October 10th, 2016. The day started, unusually. She went to urgent care that morning.
Yes, and this is a really, really crucial point that comes up again and again. She reported symptoms like chest tightness and body tremors.
On her wedding day.
Exactly. It immediately raises questions. Was it just nerves, a panic attack? Or was it something more serious, some underlying medical issue?
Did the urgent care diagnose anything?
The sources we have don't specify a diagnosis from that visit, but the fact she sought medical help for those specific symptoms just hours before getting married, it becomes incredibly significant later, especially when people start questioning if there was medical oversight. It's a key marker in the timeline.
Despite that, though, the wedding went ahead. She married Nicholas Goetzen.
Yes. And their relationship itself is another point of discussion. Apparently, they met on Craigslist just 2 months before the wedding.
Wow, only 2 months.
Yeah, a very quick timeline. And something online communities often point to questioning, how well they really knew each other, the stability of it all.
And the ceremony, where did it happen?
There's a slight discrepancy in the sources there, actually. One says a government center, which sounds more formal.
Cool.
Another suggests it was a smaller, more intimate ceremony in their apartment. It's a minor detail, maybe, but it shows how sometimes the specifics can get a bit hazy when you're piecing things together later from different accounts.
But the main point is they got married that day.
Correct. Officially married on October 10th.
And after the ceremony, they celebrated. Went to a bar with friends.
They did. Sources say they celebrated with friends at a bar, then headed back to Elisa's home, presumably to continue the celebration.
But things changed later that evening.
Apparently so. The atmosphere reportedly shifted quite dramatically. And this is where we get the first real hint of trouble, of discord. The celebration seemed to sour, setting a really ominous tone for what happened in the early hours of the next morning.
Which brings us to that critical moment, October 11th, around 3:00 a.m., a 911 call, but not from inside the house.
No, it was a neighbor. They reported hearing a couple, presumably Elisa and Nicholas, screaming and cursing right outside Elisa's home.
Screaming and cursing.
Yes. And the neighbor told the dispatcher something very specific and unsettling, that the woman sounded very distraught.
Very distraught, just hours before she died.
Exactly. It paints a picture of her emotional state right then, not happy, not calm, but audibly distressed during an argument. Police did respond.
Okay, so officers arrived.
They did, quite quickly. But by the time they got there, Elisa and Nicholas were already back inside, and crucially, no arrests were made. No report seems to have been filed beyond the initial call log.
So the police left.
Essentially, yes. And this lack of intervention, despite that clear report of a volatile situation, is something heavily criticized later. It feels like a potentially missed opportunity to document what was happening or even intervene.
And then, just a few hours later, around 7 a.m. that same morning.
Yeah.
The discovery.
The horrific discovery. Elisa's body was found. But significantly, it wasn't Nicholas Goetson who found her.
Who was it?
It was a roommate. Found her in the basement, hanging from a door frame. There was apparently a red silk scarf involved and a footstool nearby.
Oh my God.
The roommate acted immediately, cut her down, called 911. Nicholas, according to reports, was described as freaked out and hysterical.
So the roommate found her, the roommate cut her down, the roommate called for help, not the new husband.
Correct. And that distinction is absolutely vital. It's a detail that fuels so much of the later suspicion and the theories that point towards foul play. People really focus on what Nicholas was or wasn't doing in those moments.
What was the immediate official conclusion? How did the authorities rule it?
It came quickly. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office initially ruled Elisa Gomez's death a suicide.
Suicide. Just like that.
Just like that. And that ruling almost immediately faced intense criticism, especially regarding the police investigation or perceived lack thereof.
What were the criticisms?
A real lack of follow-up. For example, and this is something the family highlighted repeatedly, the roommate, the one who found her, apparently never formally interviewed by the police.
Obviously. The key witness.
That's what's reported. And that kind of omission, well, it immediately planted seeds of doubt. It made people wonder how thorough the investigation really was. Did they just jump to the suicide conclusion too quickly?
And then, as people started looking closer at this situation, some very disturbing information about Nicholas Goetson surfaced.
Yes, this was huge. News outlets like FOX9 Minneapolis started reporting on his past, and it wasn't pretty. Nicholas Goetson had an extensive documented history of domestic violence.
What kind of history?
Multiple prior convictions, serious offenses, assault, strangulation, terroristic threats. Yes. A documented history of violence against partners. And when you put that information next to Elisa's mysterious death, especially after that 3 a.m. argument, well, for her family and many others, the suicide narrative just didn't hold water anymore. It suggested a very dangerous situation.
I can only imagine how Elisa's family and friends reacted to the suicide ruling, especially knowing that history.
They rejected it immediately and forcefully. They were absolutely convinced Elisa wouldn't have taken her own life. Not on her wedding day, not ever. They believed something else happened. Foul play.
So they started pushing back.
Relentlessly. Elisa's mother, Judy Hunt, and her friends, they started this incredible campaign. They were determined to get the case reopened. They felt the police were trying to, quote, push it under the rug.
Just close the books quickly.
That was their fear. Especially given Goetson's background, it took immense perseverance from them, fighting against what felt like official dismissal. They just refused to let it go.
And their persistence, it actually worked.
It did. It's a powerful example of what advocacy can achieve. Because of that sustained pressure from the family, requests from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, and importantly, those investigative reports by FOX9 that kept the story alive.
Right, keeping it in the public eye.
Exactly. The Minneapolis Police Department quietly reopened the case. This was in August 2022. For a third time, actually. It shows that public pressure, driven by loved ones, can genuinely force authorities to take a second, harder look.
And reopening the case led to a major change, didn't it, in the official finding?
A huge change. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office amended the manner of death from suicide to undetermined.
Undetermined. What does that signify exactly?
It's a critical shift. Undetermined means that after re-examining everything, the medical examiner couldn't definitively say how she died. Was it natural causes, an accident, suicide, homicide? They couldn't be sure.
So it acknowledges the uncertainty.
Precisely. It essentially says the initial suicide conclusion wasn't fully supported by the evidence. And importantly, it officially opens the door for a proper, renewed investigation where all possibilities are considered. It validates the family's doubts, in a way.
Now, the autopsy did find substances in her system, right?
It did. Toxicology showed alprazolam, that's Xanax,
Okay.
diphenhydramine Benadryl, and alcohol.
That combination sounds potentially dangerous.
It certainly can be. A sedative, an antihistamine that causes drowsiness, and alcohol. But, and this is the really important part, the autopsy report also noted no visible trauma, no signs of injury, and crucially, no overdose confirmation was cited as the actual cause of death.
So the drugs were there, but they couldn't say for sure that the amount was what killed her.
Exactly. The presence of the substances is a fact. But whether they reached lethal levels to be the sole cause, the report didn't confirm that. And that ambiguity is key. It leaves that void, prevents a simple accidental overdose conclusion.
So where does the case stand now? Have there been any charges?
As of the latest reports, even looking into 2024, no. No one has been charged in connection with Elisa Gomez's death. The case is officially closed, despite that undetermined manner of death.
Closed but undetermined. That sounds incredibly frustrating.
Deeply frustrating for her family, for anyone looking for answers. It means the official investigation hasn't reached a conclusion about what happened. The truth is still out there, officially elusive.
There were also some hints, weren't there, that Elisa might have been feeling stress before the wedding, beyond just normal nerves.
Yes, that adds another layer of complexity. While friends definitely reported her excitement, some sources mentioned text messages, calls, where Elisa apparently expressed stress about the relationship with Nicholas, even fear or doubt.
Fear.
Some accounts suggest she confided in friends about things that made her uneasy. It doesn't point to one single answer about her death, of course, but it paints a more complex picture than just pure wedding day bliss. It suggests maybe there were underlying tensions, internal conflicts, or external pressures weighing on her.
And it's this complexity, isn't it, combined with maybe limited initial media focus, that made her case really take off online, on places like Reddit, web sleuths, TikTok.
Absolutely. When the official story feels incomplete or the investigation seems flawed, people inevitably try to fill in the blanks themselves. Online communities become these spaces for crowdsourced investigation.
Sifting through reports, news articles.
Exactly. Trying to piece together timelines, inconsistencies. Sometimes they uncover genuinely useful insights. Other times it veers into pure speculation. But for Elisa's case, with that shift from suicide to undetermined and all the lingering questions, the online world became a really active space for keeping her story alive and scrutinizing the details.
And within that online discussion, one theory seems to dominate, the idea that the husband was involved.
Yeah, the husband did it theory is definitely the most prominent online. And it's largely fueled by several key points that online sleuths constantly circle back to.
Like his history.
First and foremost, yes. Nicholas Geetzen's documented history of domestic violence, assault, strangulation, threats. That pattern of behavior immediately makes people suspicious when his new wife dies mysteriously after an argument.
And the argument itself?
Yeah.
The 3 a.m. call?
That's the second major point. That neighbor's 911 call, hearing Elisa very distraught just hours before she's found dead. It provides a direct link, a potential catalyst. Online forums trace that timeline meticulously.
Then there's the fact the roommate found her, not him.
Right. The roommate finding her, cutting her down, calling 911. That detail gets analyzed intensely. What was Nicholas doing? Why didn't he find her? And online creators often point to perceived inconsistencies in his reported behavior or timeline. There are claims, for instance, that circulate online about a delay before 911 was called after she was found, though official sources don't explicitly confirm that exact timing.
So the theory is basically a fight escalated.
The prevailing online theory, yes, is that the short, intense relationship, maybe fueled by that argument, turned violent. That Elisa died as a result, and the scene was then staged to look like a suicide to cover it up.
Which connects to another theory, not just about him, but about the system. The idea of a police cover-up or major oversight.
Exactly. This theory suggests the initial investigation wasn't just flawed, but maybe intentionally so, or at best, grossly negligent.
Why would they do that?
Online speculation ranges. Maybe to protect Geetzen for some reason, or maybe it's just symptomatic of how domestic violence cases sometimes get mishandled, not taken seriously enough. The lack of follow-up on the 3 a.m. call, not interviewing the roommate, these fuel the idea that the police weren't thorough.
And the initial lack of charges or public statements just added fuel to that fire.
Definitely. It created a vacuum where suspicion festered. People felt something was being hidden or at least not properly investigated, especially with a suspect who had such a concerning past. It really taps into a broader distrust people sometimes feel.
There's also that darker theory about the drugs found in her system. Not just suicide or accident, but something else.
Foul play disguised as an overdose. It's a chilling theory, but it stems directly from that autopsy ambiguity.
Because it wasn't confirmed as an overdose.
Right. Since they couldn't say the drugs caused her death, people speculate, could someone else have given them to her? Or encouraged her to take that mix, Xanax, Benadryl, alcohol, perhaps when she was upset after the argument.
To make it look like she did it to herself or overdosed by accident?
That's the speculation. To deliberately muddy the waters, make a homicide look self-inflicted or accidental. It's hard to prove without direct evidence, obviously, but given the circumstances and the autopsy findings, it remains a strong thread in the online discussion.
And we have to address the original theory, suicide, even though the family rejects it.
We do. It was the first official ruling. But as we've said, her friends and family find it completely unbelievable. Her happy demeanor that day, her personality, it just doesn't fit in their view. And the suspicious circumstances, the argument, Gateson's history make it highly questionable for them.
But online, some people do wonder about her mental state.
Yes, particularly on some Reddit threads. People speculate, could the stress of the wedding, the new relationship, have triggered some kind of breakdown, a panic attack? Maybe even led her to take that mix of substances herself in a moment of crisis.
So suicidal ideation brought on by stress.
That's the line of thought. But again, it runs directly counter to what those closest to her reported about her mood and excitement. So while it's discussed online, it's heavily disputed by the people who knew Elisa best.
Okay, one last theory to touch on the idea that the urgent care visit plays a role. Medical oversight.
This one shifts the focus earlier in the day. It questions whether that urgent care facility, when Elisa reported chest tightness and tremors, should have done more.
Could they have missed something serious?
That's the question. If those symptoms were a sign of a critical medical issue or even extreme distress, was the response adequate? Could a different assessment, a more thorough check, have changed the outcome? It raises questions about whether her physical state was fully understood hours before her death.
Right. Okay, let's try to unpack this a bit more now. We have this mix of substances, Xanax, Benadryl, alcohol. We have the ruling change to undetermined. What does that ambiguity really tell us?
It tells us the medical evidence isn't clear-cut. Yes, those substances could cause death, especially in combination. They depress the central nervous system. But the lack of an overdose confirmation is huge. It means the pathologist couldn't say with certainty, yes, the amount of these drugs is what killed her.
So it keeps the door open.
It keeps all doors open. Accidental overdose remains a possibility, but so does foul play, where the substances were involved, but maybe not the sole cause, or perhaps administered by someone else. And it circles back to that urgent care visit, too, where the symptoms related with something else going on medically. The ambiguity forces investigators and us to consider multiple scenarios simultaneously.
And then there's Nicholas Goetson refusing further interviews. That feels significant.
It's incredibly significant in shaping perception. His lack of cooperation, especially given he was the last person known to be arguing with her, and his documented history, it inevitably fuels suspicion.
Even without formal charges.
Exactly. When a key figure won't talk, especially when there are online claims, like that alleged delay in calling 911, it just deepens the mystery. It creates an information void that gets filled with speculation. It speaks volumes, even if it's just silence. It fosters that distrust we talked about.
So stepping back, what does this case really highlight about maybe bigger societal issues?
Yeah. Well, it's a tragic spotlight on domestic violence, isn't it? How it can escalate, how dangerous patterns can be. Elisa's compassionate nature, helping others, might, tragically, have made her vulnerable to someone with Gutson's history. It's not about blame, but about understanding the dynamics of abuse.
And the system's response.
It highlights the challenges in getting justice in domestic violence cases. The initial police response to the 3 a.m. call, the quick suicide ruling, despite red flags. It suggests potential failings or biases in how these situations are sometimes handled.
The distrust between the public and law enforcement you mentioned.
Yes, when an investigation feels incomplete, especially with a partner's violent history staring you in the face, it damages that trust. The change to undetermined is an acknowledgement, maybe, but the initial handling created skepticism that's hard to erase.
And you mentioned gendered perceptions earlier. How does that play in?
It's worth considering. When a woman dies with substances in her system, especially after a domestic disturbance, is there sometimes a quicker leap to assumptions like suicide or accidental overdose? Does it potentially divert focus from the possibility of foul play or the context of abuse?
So the initial suicide ruling might reflect that bias.
It's possible. The family certainly felt Elisa's character, and the contexts were ignored in favor of a simpler, maybe more convenient explanation initially. Challenging those biases is crucial for thorough investigations.
But amidst all this difficulty, the family's fight is remarkable.
Truly. Judy Hunt, Elisa's mother, and her friends, their advocacy is the reason this case didn't just disappear. Their refusal to accept suicide, their constant pressure, directly led to the case being reopened multiple times and the manner of death being changed.
It shows public pressure can work.
It absolutely shows that persistence, community support, and keeping a story alive can force the system to reevaluate. It's a testament to their love for Elisa and their demand for answers. They served as that crucial external check.
Yet, even with their incredible fight and that official change to undetermined, there's no resolution.
And that's the heartbreaking reality. Undetermined acknowledges the questions, but it doesn't provide answers. For Elisa's family, it's still an unsolved case. Justice hasn't been fully served.
It just hangs there.
It does. It remains this open wound, fueling those online discussions, highlighting how elusive the truth can be when things go wrong early on. It leaves us with this lingering, unsettling feeling that the full story is still unknown.
How do you investigate a death that seems medically explainable but emotionally implausible? That question really sits at the heart of Elisa Gomez's story, doesn't it? A deeply unsettling puzzle with no clear solution yet. Thank you for joining us to explore this case on Threads of Truth.
Thank you.
Next time on Threads of Truth, we follow the frantic final 911 call of Brandon Lawson, a young father who disappeared into the Texas night after muttering one final phrase, "They're chasing me."